time with Mr. Limata. He will be starting soon. Oh, story time with Mr. Limata, where all your dreams come true. Oh, it brings to life your favorite stories with a great big smile. You won't leave lonely, won't you start all the reading? I just can't wait to be hearing story time with Mr. Limata. He will be starting soon. Oh, story time with Mr. Limata, where all your dreams come true. Oh, he brings to life your favorite stories with a great big smile. You won't leave lonely, won't you start all the reading? I just can't wait to be hearing.
Good morning and welcome to Story Time. Thank you for joining us on this lovely Friday morning or Friday afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. Thank you so much for joining us today and welcome. Thank you. As you know, I'm joined today by an amazing guest who has brought an amazing extra guest with her. So please do wait and meet them very soon. Thank you so much for joining in today. And yes, I have the author of this heartwarming book, Merin and Her Very Bright Star, a story of resiliency. And this one is written by Lori Mier and illustrated by ROFFLER. And we are lucky enough today here to have Lori with us. Thank you so much for joining in. I'm glad you're here. Please, if you have questions for Lori, do post them and let them post them, and we'll be definitely trying to get them at the end of the book. But for now, I will be introducing them coming on, and so please get ready to meet them. But please let me know as well where you're joining us from and who is joining in with you. I hope you're having a lovely Friday today. I hope you have a lovely one. If your Friday is just beginning like me, it is a little cloudy out here in Oakland, but it's still a very nice day indeed. Thank you so much for joining us. How is it where you are? And of course, I hope the temperatures are going down in all those places that have been extra hot of late. Thank you so much for being here. Good morning to you and welcome to Story Time. So glad you're here with us. Good morning to you, Amanda West. How are you doing today? So glad you could join us. How are you doing? And of course, Sarah and Nathan in sunny Illinois. Good morning to you. And you say happy 4th of July weekend. Absolutely. I hope everybody gets a little more rest. And just that reminds me too, Story Time will not be here on Monday. We'll be taking a break, but we'll be back Tuesday. But for now, we have a great story coming up and an amazing guest to boot. Thank you so much for joining us today and welcome Sarah and Nathan and of course Amanda West. And you say to everybody, happy 4th of July weekend. Thank you so much for being here. Chrissy Mitchell Adams, how are you doing today? And Bowden in rainy Vermont. Well, Burlington, Vermont, rainy today. How are you doing? And you say happy Friday to everyone that is joining in. Well, thank you so much. They hear you loud and clear. Thank you for being here on Storytime with us. I'm glad you're here. And Bowden, you know Thursdays and Fridays are always a treat for us because you're here on Storytime Live. Thank you for joining in. Ellen Edwards in Chicago, how are you doing today? Happy Friday to you. Sunny Chicago. Well, enjoy it and do send us a slice of that beautiful sunshine out here in Oakland. Thank you for being here, and I am glad we're here together for this very special book that we have today. This one is Merin and Her Very Bright Star, a story of resiliency. And this one is written by our guest today, Lori Mier, and illustrated by ROFFLER. At this point in time, it is my pleasure to introduce our guest today. Lori, welcome to Storytime.
Hello. Hi, everyone.
Awesome.
We're coming. This is Jackson, my son. Hi.
Awesome.
We're live from Virginia.
Oh, that's awesome. Love it. Love it. you have this book, and like once we read it, everybody out there who's not seen it before will definitely appreciate the deeper appreciation of it, and will see why I'm so excited about it. Why this book? Why Merin and her Bright Star?
This is a story that has been with me since childhood. And just this past year, Merin just called me to write her the story. Like I said, it's been with me forever, but I was ready to write it.
Yeah, that's awesome. No, it is a beautiful one, and we'll get into reading it and then of course come back and just talk a little bit more about it and the process of this book, how it came about, how long it took for us, like to finally have this beautiful, beautiful present that you've given us. So I'll have you back very soon. Thank you for joining us today. So everybody joining in out there, this is Lori Mier, the author of this wonderful book that we're about to read. And if you have questions for her after, please do send them in and we'll try and get to as many of those as possible. Welcome, get comfortable, get settled. We will get started with our story. And we'll have our guest back in a second. All right. Thank you so much for joining in. You've got a chance to meet Lori Mier, and I am so honored today to be able to read this book to her as well. Yes. Thank you so much. And we're reading Merin and Her Very Bright Star, a story of resiliency. Lori Mier, yes, is the author, and it is illustrated by Ethan ROFFLER. All right. So here we go. On the outskirts of a smallish town, inside a smallish grey house, Merin is awake in her bedroom, gazing at a very bright star from her window. She is wishful under its silvery glow. On a very serious night 6 years ago, Merin heard herself talking to the same very bright star as though it held her mom and dad and they could hear her. Why did you have to leave? Her thoughts and questions were lost in the solar system. Still, her heart discovered that if she continued to speak to the very bright star, she would feel unruffled and unworried before falling asleep. Every day after, Merin spent night time this way. Oh. You see, Merin's parents are lost. They left Earth when she was 3 years old. At that age, she did not know how to miss them. And now she does not know how to remember them. Missing them is confusing and can feel like a dark and open space. It is a longish car ride to the city where she visits a person who helps people heal after they have lost something or someone. Merin mostly listens and sketches in her notebook when she visits. She did trust Mrs. May with her secret, and if word got out elsewhere that she talked to a star each night, she would be laughed at. In every visit with Mrs. May, Merin hears, "It is not your fault." And so she almost believes that all the gloomy and serious things that happen are not her fault. Every day, Merin arms herself with a notebook, a pencil, and an open space on a page. On the very first page is a sketch of Merin's very bright star, where she first imagined her parents were listening to her. Merin also imagines them in daydreams during those longish car rides, when she reads Explorer magazines, when she sees others huddled under an umbrella. At dinner time, she listens for a voice that might be theirs when the other parents yell, "Come inside!" During every celebration, she looks for them. Bright and beautiful things have a way of reminding her to wonder about them. The very first time she saw rainbow sherbet-colored lights dancing in the night sky. The very first crystalline trees and milky white snow of winter, shiny feathers and glittering stones for skipping, sprightly dandelion spirits, the thinking path in between the birch trees, the watchful blue heron at the edge of the lake, the inviting church bells banging, the motherly community garden. Mrs. May calls Merin's notebook a bright and beautiful shield, a paper-made armor she carries to protect herself. Even so, this armor only works for so long in making the world seem less gloomy or less serious. One afternoon, Merin went to Mrs. May's smallish group with the other kids her age who have also lost someone. Just another serious situation, Merin thought. As she settled into her seat in the circle, she noticed Leo, the fierce, as he likes to call himself, also in the group. Oh no, someone from my neighborhood is here. Merin pulled out her notebook and began to sketch the planet Venus. She had read earlier that week in the Explorer magazine that Venus is the brightest of all the planets in the solar system. Does anyone know what resilient means? Mrs. May asked the group. Merin kept her head in her notebook and listened. Resilient people find ways to get through difficult losses and believe that things will get better, said Mrs. May. Merin's very bright star came to mind. It's better to talk to them than to feel alone, she admitted to herself. But certainly she would never say that out loud to the group. While she sketched, she thought of Leo. Leo has an open space also. Maybe that's why he is so brave. Maybe he has imagined his lost person in something such as a very bright star. As she headed out, Mrs. May pointed to the sketch and said, Venus is sometimes called the evening star because it is the brightest right after the sun goes down, and so it only appears as a very bright star. Merin's smile met Mrs. May's. Goosebumps rose on her arms. That evening, she scanned the smallish bookshelf in the smallish grey house and put down the astronomy guidebook, grabbed a headlamp, and went to bed early. She compared the night sky in the guidebook with the stars outside her bedroom window. As it turned out, Merin's very bright star was, in fact, Venus. For all I know, my parents are on another planet, Merin mumbled. If only all lost people went to Venus. She stared hard at her very bright star and wished that it were true. Because if it were true, then all lost people would no longer be lost. Hers or Leo's. Tears trailed down her face. She brushed them away, grabbed her notebook, wrote Leo inside, and then tucked it under the pillow. Afterwards, she told her parents a story about how they helped her to be resilient. And here is what became true. All the bright and beautiful things were filling her life. And she was brighter. And she was not the only person with an unknown space wanting to be filled. The star taught her that she could turn something lost into something found. And if everyone did this, the world would be brighter. Unworried, she fell asleep, as she did for many more nights than not. One evening before her next birthday, Merin and Leo sat outside the smallish grey house on the outskirts of the smallish town, listening to the echo of wailing loons as the last light in the sky turned into indigo and dim stars emerged. Merin asked Leo if he could keep a secret, her secret, and keep it forever. What do you believe? She told him. The end. Oh, thank you so much for that wonderful story. Lori Mier, I love this book so much, and I hope you enjoyed it out there. And there are many, many questions that I'm sure, just like me, that you have about this book and about this story. And at this point, I would like to call back Lori so we can talk about it a little bit more. Thank you so much. Such a powerful book.
Thank you for reading it. It was an honor to hear it from you.
Oh, thank you. It is, I'll go back to that question again. Why this story? Why do you think this story had to be told?
So it is based on my real life story. My parents left Earth when I was 3 years old. And I did talk to a star in my adolescence as if I was talking to my mom and dad. And it got me through a lot of difficult things.
Yeah. And, it is a book about grief and hope. What was the message? Why did, you're writing this personal story. And I think somebody mentions in here that you put out a story that, you connect, you can tell the connection. We can tell how much this means to you and how much a part of your life it is. Like, why did you feel it had to be told, especially in a kid-friendly way?
Sure. I really wanted to normalize grief. I feel like all of us will go through that from the beginning. For me, even before we're born, I think we understand grief, but we don't talk about it a lot. Even as adults, I don't think we talk about it. So when I was little, no one talked to me about my parents' death and how that impacted me. Even though maybe I couldn't articulate it then, it still would have been nice to be able to have somebody talk to me about it. And the message of turning, things that are lost into something found. I realized when I decided to write this that I've been doing that since I was a child. It wasn't just something I've been doing as an adult, but I was doing it all along. And to show children that they have that capacity in them and that power to do that.
Yeah. So, listening to your story and listening to that, you did have parents, you did get adopted after your parents died, right? So thinking about that, and were you thinking of finding ways to equip parents when you wrote this book, to equip parents with a tool to use? Because it feels like it's such an important thing, and just wondering what were some of those thoughts, especially relating to your parents, who I'm sure you loved and loved you, but then how was that? Why was it important to you that parents know how to talk to children about it?
Sure, I feel I wanted to normalize therapy as a past social worker, and also somebody that didn't seek therapy until I was an adult. So I wanted to normalize that for parents and children, that it's okay to get that help for children when they're grieving. And also, I chose not to add that layer of that story of who adopted Merin and which she lives with now and what's going on, because I wanted it to be a simple story with a message. I didn't want to add those layers.
Right.
But I feel like the book could be a great tool for parents. Even if a child has not suffered with a significant loss as I did, I have heard from other children who have read it that they could relate it to losing their pet.
Right.
Or their friend moving away. Any sort of grief that comes up in their childhood, this book can still relate.
That's so amazing that you mentioned that. And I like I can relate as you were reading that. I think it was something that, and I find this, I don't know, like in Zambia particularly, like you find this thing where it's like men don't cry. And so you have this thing, like even when I lost my mom, I cried, but I felt like I didn't grieve long enough. Like there were times when I would sit alone and think about it. And I can see in this book, like it gives me that strength to think about what help can be there for me, right? And so I really appreciated that. And then I know that you worked with some people on this book. How was it opening up about such a personal story and bringing in a team to work with you? And I think you worked with Rise. So do you want to talk about them and then talk about how it was opening up?
Absolutely.
Part of your life.
Yeah. So I mean, my initial idea was to send this manuscript off to a publisher like Chronicle Books. And then COVID hit, and the day I was headed out to the post office to send my manuscript, I went to check online to make sure I had everything in order. And on their website, it said, we're not accepting because of COVID. And
right.
so a couple weeks later, Rise, who's an organization I've been working with in my personal life, they're a social justice organization that gives voice to the Black community.
Yeah.
And I've been with them in their book club, and they reached out to me and said, I know a publisher who could help you. And so we formed a team, and it ends up, had I gone the route of just sending in my manuscript, I wouldn't have made the relationships that I made.
That you did.
I wouldn't have been able to choose the illustrator that I chose, who I thought was absolutely perfect for this book.
Yeah.
And it just gave a platform to bring the characters to life and decide, how I was going to represent the characters and everything. And so sharing the story was, with my life story and the way I lost my parents, I've shared that over my life. But writing Merin was doing it in a new way, in a healing way that I've never healed before. I say that I've been healing all my life, but I was finally at a point where I felt in the right community, in the right place in my life, healed enough to be able to share the story without, I'm not sure the word I'm looking for. It was a chance to rewrite my story too. The whole therapy piece, having those relationships as a child that I feel like I didn't have. It was a way to rewrite that. And that felt amazingly healing.
Wow, it's like I sense the connection. And also, how has that, you mentioned healing, how has healing happened for you in writing the book, in helping others, and how has that also shaped your life? Because I know that your work has kind of revolved around therapy, and you mentioned ecotherapy, and I wanted to touch on that as well. Like, what is ecotherapy, for somebody that's not heard it?
Sure. It is, I've always been connected to nature. And I share that in the book, like just feeling connected to the cosmos when I was a child. I mean, that was just natural for me. And and so as an ecotherapist now, I am fairly new at it, but being able to help others feel reconnected with nature. And I love to hike, and so I encourage that. Sunrise, sunset hikes, just feeling that connection, waking up in the morning with the sun and those things. I was really attached to blue herons as a child, and that's why there's a blue heron in the book.
No, that's awesome. I appreciate that. And also I know that you mentioned on kind of like, just to lighten note a little bit, was I know you worked with the illustrator, Ethan ROFFLER, but there's also a special another illustrator that worked with you. Would you like to talk to us about that?
Sure. My son has an illustration in the book, and it was Ethan's idea to have him draw this page.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate that Jackson is not with us right now. He's but yeah, like so.
Right. Yeah, he drew the planet Venus for this, so that's really special.
Yeah, no, I love that you did that. It's just, like it's such a connection. I think that you're in your grief I'm sure it's a process that is ongoing, but also to have then your son connected to that, I think is just something special. How is it working with him, or like doing something like this together?
It was fun. When I first wrote the manuscript, he before we ever decided to publish it, he asked me to read it every night, probably for a good couple of months.
Yeah,
he's really connected to the story, so that it's very special to pass that down to him.
That's awesome. And then I know that in your own, like you're an educator. So how is that? Like, what do you see? Do we have spaces in schools, or maybe in the schools that you've been exposed to? Like, do we have spaces for children to grieve, or to get therapy? Do we have those spaces? And what more can we do?
Sure. I don't feel like we have enough. I feel like the way our education system is set up, we don't have enough funding and things like that to really have more counselors and social workers in the schools that could, and teachers don't have enough time, right? I feel like a lot of teachers would love to be able to read a story like this and have deeper conversations, but maybe they don't feel supported enough to do so.
Yeah. That's one thing too. Like, I think that feeling supported, and then one of the things that that happens with Merin in this story is she says, "Oh, someone from my neighborhood," and she buries herself in her book just to write and doesn't know. And I feel like in the communities, because we've not normalized it, like you're saying, we've not told people it's okay to grieve, it's okay to open up, and so then we feel like there's that fear. And so I really like that page. And why did you mention that specifically?
Just like you said, I feel like we don't give permission to children to talk about it and to grieve. At least I see that even come out with my own child. Like sometimes I'm like, stop crying.
Yeah, right,
and when I really don't know what's going on, right? It could be, I think it's just something silly, but it could be a lot of built up emotions.
Right.
And I think we're just programmed to not want to talk about those things because it's scary. And I feel like I just want that message. I want deeper conversations to happen with adults and children with this book. My intention when I wrote it was for it to be a read with book, not just a book a child picks up and reads on their own, because I wanted those conversations and whatever a child feels from it to be able to talk to your kid about that. And for adults, I feel like a lot of adults have connected to the book.
Right. No, I absolutely connected with it as soon as I read it. As soon as you sent, like, that email came through, and I was like, and you're like, you should look at this. And I just felt connected with it. And I knew, I started, like making my own, like just thinking in my own life. It got me thinking. And then it made me think too, as an educator, like, how much space do I give to my students at school to do this? And then with the pandemic having happened too, this is such a timely book, because I feel like there's so many things that are happening right now. Like, everybody either knows somebody who's been affected, somebody, like, and it's just one of those things where every time we're thinking, is like, who do I talk to? How do I share this? Can I share this? And so just that this book, I wanted to read this part because I think it explains exactly what you're saying on the back, where also just want to show the RISE organization that you worked with on this book. It's just amazing. And it says here, the depth of Lori's pain and trauma of this day seems like it's never ended. You know, like, and I get that sense, that connection, that, you know, like the strong connection that you have to that. So I just wanted to know too, like, are some days better than others?
Oh, absolutely. You know, I'm in the process of my aunt, who is my adopted mother. She is in the process of, well, she's in transitional care right now and probably going to a nursing home. And so when that came up, you know, thinking about losing a second mother was very, very challenging for me. Not really knowing how I would feel about that. But all of my life, you know, birthdays, things like that, definitely, it's definitely ebb and flow for grief. And that's one of the things I wanted to put into this book, because I feel like it's non-traditional in the sense that most movies for children or books for children about grief, or should I say, a lot of them have a connection to somebody dying, right? There's a lot of stories and movies out there that are fantasy and things like that, where somebody has died and there's all this fantasy, and then something magical and healing happens at the end. And then that's the end.
Yeah.
But it's not the end.
It's not. No,
it's a lifelong process. And so I wanted it to be more realistic, I guess, than just there's this magical healing thing that happens and then I'm okay.
Yeah. No, you know, and you did an amazing job. Like, you can tell this story comes from the heart. And for those of you know, like just joining us now, like, this is our guest, Lori Mier. She's the author of this amazing book, Merin and Her Very Bright Star, a story of resiliency. And we just read it, and it's very powerful. I love it so much. And you can find it at Blue Mountain, bluemountainpathcoaching.com, right? And so please do find it there. And I know that you took a step. How can, you know, like, just, I guess we'll talk about that as well, like where people can buy it and how you made a deliberate choice in where people can find it. But there's something from Chrissy here. And if you want to just look at that, and I was just reading that, and, you know, like, listening to what Chrissy has to say, it's like, even just like, I wish I had that book when I was younger. And I think it's something that I am glad I have now as an educator working with kids and being able to share this book, being armed with this too. Like you said, you know, like it says there's a shield, like Merin has a shield, right? She's armed with a paper shield. And I feel like this is our shield, right? This is our into those discussions with students, with kids. But yeah, I don't know if you have anything to share with Chrissy there, and just, you know, like, just relating to what she's talking about.
Thank you, Chrissy, for that comment. I feel like a lot of us go through that same exact thing. And definitely, you know, that how you imagined your brother, very similar to how I imagined my parents. And I think in the book, you know, Mrs. May really sees that in Merin, and that's what I love. I feel like if we look for that connection, even we see it, we pull out those connections in nature and things like that, but they're also in other people. And I love group work, and so that's why I added it to the book, and because I feel like group therapy and things like that really connect us to one another, and we realize that we're not the only ones that do this.
Yeah. And there was that point where, you know, like you mentioned with Merin, when she sees somebody that she knows, I mean, there's a fear, but there's also a recognition. It seems like, oh, he must also have an empty space. And so just wondering, like finding that, did you have people like that for you that were a support? Was there a real life Mrs. May?
No. Looking back, and that's what kind of sparked me to finally write it. Somebody had asked me what I felt made me resilient. And I didn't know how to answer that question, because in my social work trainings and things, I would go to these conferences and things that talked about resiliency. And they always said, you know, with resiliency, there's always that one person. That's just something that goes, you won't be resilient unless there's that one person that connects with you. And I don't feel like I had that as a child. Not to say that, you know, there wasn't love and things like that, but I don't feel like I had that. And so I felt like resiliency was also innate. It wasn't just something you learned. And so that's what kind of sparked me to write it. But as my life went on, I definitely had a lot of Miss Mays. And I think I finally got to a point where I had a Miss May, or maybe more than one Miss May in my life as an adult. And so I wanted to put all of that into the book.
That's amazing. And I, you know, like, I love that you bring the complexity of this issue to your writing, you know, like, and when you talk about things in there, I think you do bring, like, it's not a straightforward thing. Like, there are different ways, and you touch on so many things. Like, she copes one minute she's writing in a book, the other minute she's leaning on somebody else for support. And so realizing too, as we're living in our communities, like, how can we create those spaces, like Chrissy mentioned too, like, you know, like, how do we normalize therapy and safe spaces, you know, and people's grieving styles, right? Like, realizing that. And so, like, in your work, I know that, you know, you've done so much in this area as well. Like, what do you find, like, what supports would you want to see for yourself as somebody who's, you know, like, offering therapy, but also somebody that then, like, the supports that you feel people that you interact with need?
Sure. I would love to see just more grief groups everywhere. Children's grief groups. Definitely. I mean, you know, with education, I taught summer school at Rise. So it wasn't in the public school system, but it was with Rise. And we had very small classes, like 5 kids to a class. So, you know, when we can do that, if we could ever do that in the public school system, you know, having smaller classes and working more one-on-one with students, I think that would help to be able to have deeper conversations and connections.
Right.
Yeah, definitely, you know, more groups and just more books. I would love to see more children's books that kind of normalize therapy. Most of them that I've seen that have to do with death are very straightforward, like steps. And, you know, I've been told that books about death should really say the word death in them and things like that. And I didn't want to do that. That wasn't for me, that's not how I grieve. So like I said, it's not the same for everyone. Even as a child, had somebody told me, you know, death is final, we don't need to call it anything else, I still would have talked to the star. It wouldn't have made any difference. I still would have wished that they would walk through the door at any moment, even if somebody had said death is final. So I think that approach can be changed to where we can just talk about, well, how does it make you feel to talk to this star? How does it make you feel know that one day you'll see them again? Or whatever it is. It doesn't necessarily have to be death is final, you know. So more books that are more non-traditional.
And like I think you even mentioned that. I feel like in the book, I don't know how much you thought of, thought about it. But as I was reading, or if this was the same thinking, but you mentioned like when Mrs. May gives the definition of resiliency, and I think then Merin mumbles to herself, and she's like, say something like, "Oh, but it's still okay to talk. It's still okay to talk to I think to talk to the stars or something," and it makes me feel like let me see if I can find the page. But I saw that there was that kind of like pushing of her own understanding, her own feeling about the way she was grieving, even though it was something she didn't want to say out loud. But yeah.
Yeah, no, I love that you made that connection.
I appreciated it very much. Yeah. And then as we were searching for that page, if we find it, I just wanted also to, like acknowledge, I feel like this book, just from the one that, the Rise, the message that Rise has on the back, and also what your own appreciation for the people that came through. And I just wanted to share that too, because you say, to my children, Earthside and Spiritside, Jackson Blaze and Merin Laurel, this was written in the stars and for us all. To my husband, Vince, for your unwavering support. To the beautiful community of women who know very well the journey of healing. Chanda, Sharon, Chandra, Robin, Emily, Chrysanthia, Stacy, Rachel, Natalie, Wendy, Becky, thank you for being you and for holding up this deeply personal healing story. I'm like, even in those appreciations, even in that, like, it's just, you feel the strength of your message and how, how deep this goes. And that was one of the things that really stood out for me and I really appreciated. Was that, like, I know you mentioned that you wanted to connect, you wanted to give parents a tool, and was that intentional to bring this strong connection to it so others could relate?
Absolutely. Yeah. And for me, when I tell my story, I talk about looking for that connection in that community all my life, because that's something that I was always drawn to as a child. When I left school, later on, I did not make it through college the first time around, let's just say. And so I left and went to AmeriCorps, which is where I met my husband. And I had just always been searching for community. And it wasn't until I moved to Virginia, because I'm from Minnesota, but it wasn't until I moved to Virginia and am in the space I'm in now that I really felt like I had it. And so the beginning, the dedication is deeply personal and very much why I was able to write the book when I was.
When you did. So. Yeah. No, it's an absolutely powerful book. And I hope that many people find it in many spaces. And just talking about that too, where can people find this book?
So currently it is only available on my website at bluemountainpathcoaching.com. And it might be available later at different platforms, but for now, that's it.
Where people can find it. Yeah. And it's just, like I just want to appreciate you and, your authenticity and just you allowing us to share, to be vulnerable with us, because it's deeply personal, as you mentioned, and as you can see, as you can hear, feel from the book, feel from the writing. And I think for you sharing that piece of yourself with us, you've given us a very, very important tool. And as an educator, I honestly feel like this is something that will be absolutely helpful in my work. And I hope that many more people out there can find it, many more adults can find it. And I think, like we say, children's books are not just for children, right? Like, there's so much that I'm learning from this book that I appreciate, that I can connect and relate back to myself. So, another thing too is, like, how was this journey, and how, you ended up doing it publishing it independently. But like, how was that journey, and how special do you think that this made this book? Like, is there an extra layer of it being special because of that?
Right. Yes, absolutely. It was challenging at times. I'm not gonna lie about that. It was. I didn't want to self-publish at first because, it's a lot of money up front. It's a lot of trial and error, really. What I first did it was right when COVID hit, I made a private group and invited some trusted people and friends to it. And I read the book out loud to see if they thought that, it's worthy of being published. And that's kind of where I felt I could do it.
Yeah.
So I thank all of them for allowing me to share that with them, and them encouraging me throughout this entire process, which they have. The relationships, like I said before, being able to choose the illustrator was, I keep telling people it was every part of it was written in the stars, because it's not just a book for me, or I think for the people that were with me in creating it and bringing it to life. It has become so much more than that. It
is a lovely book, lovely message. And I think as adults, it's definitely something that we need to be, like, talking about these kind of like heavy subjects, heavy topics. I think it's time that maybe we even stop calling them that, to say topics, subjects, like that we should be talking about them, because we are experiencing them every day. Our students, our children are experiencing them. So how do we all together move in that healing, like you mentioned, like healing process? And I wish you the very best with this book too. Like, just what's your ideal scenario for this book? Like, I have my own in my head right now, like going through, but I'm just thinking too, like, in your head, what do you have? What do you hope?
I would love to see it in therapy offices, waiting rooms, classrooms. My plan, I had lost my social work job during COVID. And so, that's when I started my own business. I would love to just travel around and take my book with me and do talks with people, with children. I would even love to work with adults, like if there's trainings for therapists and things like that, come in and talk about the book with them. Ecotherapy, I could certainly use it in an ecotherapy session. I have a lot of plans. It's amazing that you still, you have those dreams, those plans, like, even with the difficulty that you've mentioned, the things that have happened, and even just, losing one's job too. Those are also traumatic things, right? And so to think about you coming through those and still giving a part of yourself to the world in the way that you've done, I really appreciate this. And I hope that, like, people out there who are watching, who are listening, and who will later be seeing this, like, I hope you get yourself a copy of the book, and then also that we begin to think about ways that we can definitely make spaces available for grieving, spaces for group therapy. And as Christy mentions, just lovely book. And thank you so much, Lori, for this. Any like messages that you have for people out there? I know that you're involved with social justice work too. You're like you have your own dreams, as you mentioned, things that you want to achieve. Any final like last messages for other authors who might be thinking of publishing? And I love that you mentioned, like, it's hard, it's not easy to be published. So, like, even just messages for people like that. If you have a story and you just do it, I feel like, write it, put it out there, talk to your, introduce it to your friends first and see what there's a lot of encouragement out there that you'll find once you do it. And I would love to just shout out to Rise and New Beginnings Publishing, and also Stories Untold, which is Ethan and Jeff, who illustrated and designed the book.
Yeah.
And all of us together, I think, created a great book. So
you have. No, you absolutely have. It's, yeah, it is one that, you know, I think, and like you said, you're not, you know, like you're not, you bring its complexity, the complexity of the issue at hand, and also the complexity of the people, the person in it. Like you can see with Merin, the different ways that she's coping with things, dealing with things, and also, you know, like understanding and not understanding, and showing that it is okay. Life is not a straight path. I really appreciate that.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, thank you for
being this.
thank you for being here on Storytime with us, and for, I think, taking the band-aid off this one and actually, you know, like allowing us to face it and deal with this issue. Like begin, hopefully, you know, these are steps that a lot of community people will be taking to begin that process of healing, or to take part in the process of healing. Thank you so much for being here, Lori. And
thank you.
Yes, this has been our guest for today, a very special guest indeed, with a very special book, Merin and Her Very Bright Star, a story of resiliency, written by, of course, Lori Mier and illustrated by Ethan ROFFLER. Thank you so much for joining us on Storytime today, wherever you are joining us from. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope we learned a thing or two. I absolutely did. And I encourage you to find this book. And this is the website. Please do visit and find it there at bluemountainpathcoaching.com. And of course, find Lori as well. Reach out to her. Find her on Instagram, find her on Facebook, and reach out and find out ways in which she can participate in things that you're doing around this, and can be a great guide in that. So thank you so much for joining us, Lori. And of course, for giving us this wonderful, wonderful present that you had for us today.
Thank you for the conversation.
You know, absolutely. All right, I'll catch you in the back in a second. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining in. That was the amazing Lori Mier, and I hope you enjoyed that one. I hope we picked up, you know, like we left feeling equipped with dealing about this issue. And it is, you know, like definitely we've all experienced loss in one way or another, you know, like whether it's now during the pandemic, earlier in our lives. And this is something that will be with us for a while. So it's ways that we can find to equip and learn to deal with it as adults, to help our young ones deal with it, and to learn how we can be giving space and ways in which people can grieve. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you for sharing in this very deep story with me today. I absolutely appreciate each and every one of you for being here. And the biggest thank you for today, of course, to Lori Mier for being here and sharing this wonderful journey that she's on right now. And join her on this journey. Let us make our communities places in which we can share, we can open up, we can be vulnerable, and to let people know that it is okay, because these things will be around us. They are around us. Death is around us, and we just have to keep pushing each other, leaning on each other when we need to, but also being given space to be alone when you need it. So thank you so much, Lori, for that beautiful, beautiful message. And the organizations that Lori's worked with, like Rise, please do follow those links in the chats and go on and learn more about them. Thank you so much for joining me. This has been story time for this week. Amazing stories. I told you we had a wonderful week awaiting, and I hope that you've enjoyed it. I know it's definitely overshot whatever we were thinking. It has been a lovely time this week, and today too has been special, diving into this very, very important topic. So please do remember where you can find this book, and also see how you can have Lori join you, and also go back, look at what we talked about, listen to what we talked about, listen to the book, and see that it is definitely one that should be on your shelf, at home, at work, at your local libraries. Advocate for the books that you want to see. Get representations in all aspects of our lives. Thank you so much for joining me today. This has been Story Time. I love you all. I will see you again next week. I'll be back on Tuesday. So next week we're back on Tuesday. Monday is off. I'll be taking Monday off, and we'll be back on Tuesday after the long weekend, the 4th of July weekend. But thank you so much for being here today, and I absolutely appreciate each and every one of you. I wish you a lovely weekend. Please enjoy it, and I wish you health and wellness, you and your loved ones. I know that it is, not the easiest of times, but please do follow those health guidelines and read about them, read about vaccines, and make your decisions about if whether you're taking one, and just find out information, read about them, find out information, ask the doctors, ask the people in your community, do things that can help you ease your mind. So thank you so much for joining me today. I absolutely appreciate it. This time, learning together every day. Yes, that's why we're here on Storytime. Thank you so much. And a big thank you to Lori Mier for being with us. Please have yourselves a wonderful day. Much love from me. And please do remember to check in on your neighbors, check in on your friends, and just say hi and see how they are doing. Your hello could be the thing that is needed that day. Thank you so much for joining in. Have a lovely weekend. Bye-bye.
Brings to life favorite stories with a great big smile. You won't live lonely, won't you start all the reading? We just can't wait to be hearing. Brings to life your favorite stories with a great big He brings to life your favorite stories with a great big smile. You won't live lonely, won't you start all the reading? We just can't wait to be hearing. Brings to life your favorite stories with a great big smile. You won't live lonely, won't you start all the reading? We just can't wait.